What's up, YouTube? Today, I'm going to be playing some TNT games on Hypixel while I read you some disturbing Reddit stories. I hope all of you guys are doing well, and thank you so much for clicking on the video. Comment what you want to see me do in Minecraft next. Anyways, let's get into the video. The first story is called, I woke up to a stranger in my apartment. He says he lives here. I'm always so tired after going home. The fluorescent scream of the office light still echoes behind my eyes, even here in the blessed dimness of the stairwell. I climb 3 flights, each step feeling like I'm dragging an anvil chained to my ankle. My key finds the lock on apartment 3B, my lock. The deadbolt thunks open. I shoulder the door in, smelling the faint, comforting ghost of last night's cheap instant noodles and the dusty warmth trapped inside. I don't even make it to the bedroom. The sagging, familiar embrace of my old couch in the living room calls out. I sink into it, the springs groaning their familiar complaint beneath my weight. The fabric smells faintly of dust and me as sleep drags me under. A few hours later, I jolt awake in terror as a hand grabs my shoulder and shakes me violently. Hey, hey, someone shouts. I jerk awake, gasping, disoriented. Silver moonlight cuts the room into sharp shapes and deep, pooling shadows. A man leans over me, his face gaunt with sweat in the gloom. His eyes are wide, wild marbles reflecting the weak light. Get up! What the hell are you doing in my apartment? His voice is a harsh rasp, cutting straight through whatever dream I was trapped in. Panic surges through me. I lurch upright, heart pounding. You're what? I blink hard, trying to steady my vision. No, this is my apartment. This is 3B. I live here. The man takes a step back, just enough to half merge with the shadows by the doorway. Are you out of your damn mind? I live in 3B. What are you even doing here? I don't know who you are, I say, trying to sound firm, authoritative, anything but panicked. But you need to leave before I call the police. Oh, I need to leave? That's rich. You broke into my place and you're threatening me. I run a hand through my hair, eyes flicking to the hallway. Could I shove him out and lock the door? Could I grab my phone? Where is my phone? And call someone? I take a cautious step toward him, hands half raised. Look, I don't know what this is. Maybe you got the wrong floor or something, or maybe you're confused, but this is my apartment, all right? You don't live here. He stares at me. Then, with sharp, jerking movements, he points toward the kitchenette. Oh, yeah? Then tell me that's your owl mug. I follow his finger. A chipped blue owl mug sits on the coffee table like a trap. I blink. I don't know. That's not mine. Damn right it's not, he snaps. That's my mug, and where's my sailboat painting? I had it right there. He jabs a finger toward the wall above the TV. Are you a thief? I turn. My faded Swiss Alps poster is gone. In its place, a garish print of a sailboat on water so blue it looks fake. Wait, I had a poster there. Mountains. Swiss Alps. I swear it was there. The man just stares at me, chest rising and falling fast. I hold up my hands like I'm warding off a wild animal. Okay, maybe I screwed up. My voice wavers, half swallowed by the silence. Maybe I'm wrong. I must have come in the wrong door. I didn't mean to shit. I'm so sorry. I take a step back, knees weak. I'll go, alright? I'll just get my stuff and go. But something stops me. I glance back at the coffee table. At that blue owl mug. It's not just unfamiliar. It's wrong. The eyes aren't painted right. They're uneven. One stares forward. The other's cocked sideways, like it's watching the hallway behind me. The man hasn't moved. His expression has changed. Less angry now. More uncertain. His eyes flick from the wall to the table to me. I don't remember this table being glass, he says quietly. I look down. The table's wood. It's always been wood. What are you talking about? I ask, but my voice is too soft to sound confrontational. No, it was glass, he mutters. Round. Had a chip on the edge from when I dropped the takeout. This one's wood. Square. And that lamp? He turns slowly. That's not my lamp. Something creaks in the bedroom. Neither of us moves. I think, he says, breath fogging lightly in the suddenly cold air. I think this isn't your apartment, or mine. The frantic anger is gone, replaced by a mirror of my own icy fear.
Keys, he rasps, digging into his pocket with trembling fingers. He pulls out a key ring. We need to get out of here. We'll figure out what the hell's going on outside. My own keys are cold, heavy lumps in my hand. We don't speak again. The silence is a suffocating presence, thick with the smell of decay and the unnerving feeling of being watched by the very shadows that cling to the walls. The hallway to the door seems longer than it should be. I take a step, and the carpet squelches faintly beneath my foot. I glance down. The floor looks the same. Beige, ugly, a little stained. But now I don't trust it. Behind us, the bedroom door creaks again, only this time it doesn't stop. It opens slowly, with the hush of breath sliding between teeth. He doesn't turn, neither do I. Don't look back, he whispers. His voice shakes. Just walk. We move, inching forward. Every object in the living room seems shifted. The couch leans ever so slightly toward the wall, cushions caved in, like something heavy just rose from them. The bookshelf is missing a shelf. My hand tightens around the keyring. The keys rattle too loudly, like they're trying to call attention to us, like they want something else to hear. We're almost there, I murmur, not sure who I'm trying to reassure, him or myself. The front door is 10 feet away. 8. A soft knock echoes from inside the bedroom. The man beside me flinches. I don't dare look. The temperature drops. My breath fogs the air, hangs there, then drifts backward, against the laws of physics. I choke on it. This thing, it's copying us. Badly. The front door looms closer now, but the handle seems off. Longer than I remember. He reaches the door first, his hand trembling violently as he tries to jam his key into the deadbolt. It scrapes uselessly against the plate. It won't fit. Panic edges back into his voice. It should just unlock from inside. I hiss, my hand closing over the cold knob. I twist. It turns freely. Thank God. With a surge of desperate hope, I yank the door open. We stumble out together into the hallway, gasping lungfuls of stagnant, unmoving air. It tastes thick with dust and that same underlying damp decay. The hallway light fixture is shattered, glass shards glittering dully on the floor below. Weak, gray pre-dawn light filters from a grimy window at the far end, revealing a scene that stops us dead. The hallway is a ruin. Wallpaper hangs in long, moldering strips, revealing crumbling plaster underneath. The carpet is threadbare, stained with dark, unidentifiable patches, pulled up in places to show warped floorboards. Doors to other apartments hang askew on broken hinges, revealing glimpses of darkness within. Cobwebs thick as gauze drape the corners and ceiling. The air is frigid, smelling overwhelmingly of damp, rot, mildew, and neglect. Utter, absolute desolation. This, the man beside me whispers, his voice cracking. This building, it's condemned. Look. He points a shaking finger towards a large official notice nailed crookedly to the wall opposite my door. Our door. Apartment 3B. The notice is faded, water-stained, but the bold red letters are unmistakable. Condemned. Structurally unsound. Entry prohibited. My blood turns to ice. We both slowly turn to look back at the door we just emerged from. Apartment 3B. The wood is warped, the paint blistered and peeling. A thick layer of grime coats the surface, thick as old moss. The number 3B is barely visible beneath it, the brass digits green with corrosion. The keyhole looks rusted shut. It looks like it hasn't been opened in years. The man raises his hand slowly, like lifting the key costs him something. I look down at mine. Both identical, both for 3B, both seemingly useless against the decayed reality before us. Yet they worked. Moments ago. He meets my eyes. Our keys hang limp in our hands. The only sound is the frantic hammering of our hearts and the silence, and then the shadows behind the door shift. At first I almost miss it, just a flicker of movement in the dark, a smudge of black deeper than the shadows. But then it pushes forward, slow and deliberate. It isn't a person, not quite. The shape doesn't hold together right. Limbs bend where they shouldn't, joints jutting at broken angles. Where a face should be, there's only a hollowed-out suggestion of one, like a mask left too close to a flame. And the worst part? The hallway isn't big enough for it. The ceiling should scrape its skull. The walls should press against its shoulders. But it keeps coming anyway, folding itself into the space like it's bending the apartment around it. The shape tilts its head. My ribs clamp tight, breath trapped like a live thing in my throat. The man beside me makes a sound, not quite a whimper, maybe a prayer. A wet crack splits the silence. The doorframe splinters, just a hairline fracture. But it sounds like a gunshot in the still air. We run. Stairs blur underfoot. We don't stop until concrete turns to asphalt, until the sky bleeds dawn. Our eyes meet, a silent scream passing between us. My stomach drops as reality rearranges itself in my mind. This isn't right. The street signs are unfamiliar, the buildings wear strange colors, and that terrible, clawing realization. I don't live in an apartment. I own a house. A blue colonial with hydrangeas out front. A mailbox with mine and Olivia's names painted on the side. A garage where my daughter's bike leans against the wall. Cold sweat trickles down my back. How did we get inside that place? Our next story we are reading is called There's Something Seriously Wrong with My Family's New Home. I knew something was off the moment I saw the place. It turned out to be worse than I could have possibly imagined. I first laid eyes on the house after my parents had closed the deal. We'd been driving through a fancy neighborhood that our rusty Honda CR-V felt out of place in. After a final turn, the house appeared at the end of a lane, far enough away from the other homes to feel somehow separate from the rest of the community. It was tall and old, yet well kept, earning a vintage boldness that I appreciated. Nestled into an evergreen wood, it seemed like the last bit of civilization, before a wilderness that stretched ever on. That is our new house, I gasped, leaning forward to poke my head between the front seats. Taken by the majesty of it, I paid little mind to the locals who stared at us as we passed. My dad chuckled heartily. It is, Ari. How? I was only 17, but old enough to know that we couldn't have afforded such a place. It was a steal, my mom chirped, glancing at my father. We got so lucky. It's been how long, dear, that we've been house hunting? 2 years, my dad sighed. Well, patience does pay off, my mom went on, gesturing at the house. Wait long enough and search hard enough, and you might just strike gold. Smelly gold, that is, added my dad, with another chortle. I nodded absently, gawping at the building. I didn't need any better explanation. I was in no position to complain. That monument at the end of the lane was to be my new home. I want my own room, exclaimed my younger sister Lena. My younger brother Kai pouted a little at that. She was 8 and he was 4. They'd been sharing a room since Kai was old enough to be away from our parents. You'll have just that, honey, answered my mom. Lena squealed in excitement, grinning ear to ear. She couldn't have known that she'd soon come to regret this and never wish to sleep alone again in her life. Things were fine for the first few days, as you'd expect. The interior of the house was as old and proud as its exterior and twice as spacious as our former place. It was smelly, though, as my dad had mentioned. The sour reek that seemed to permeate the place was the main reason we got such a discount, my mom explained. Our dogs, Chiefy and Miss Bear, loved it, even with their extra sensitive noses. They were running up and down the halls barking all day long, unbothered by the stink. They left plenty of dirt on the floors, drawing complaints from my parents. It was unsettling when the dogs growled at the house come nighttime, but that was easily explained, as the old building moaned and creaked plenty when the winds off the wilderness pushed against it. The doggos would need a week to adjust. That was all. The first thing that really rubbed me the wrong way was Kai talking to himself in his room. My brother and sister were in the bedrooms on either side of my own, and it was easy enough to hear them through the old woodwork. Lena was singing along to the K-pop Demon Hunter soundtrack on one side. That was nothing new. But on the other side, my typically quiet little brother was mumbling, and I couldn't hear anyone else with him. I didn't think much of it at first, but this behavior continued, and he'd even be talking to himself around the house. My mom was the one to confront him about it. Kai, sweetie, what are you saying? Are you talking to yourself? Kai looked up at her, confused. No, Mommy. I'm talking to my friend. Ooh, creepy, I thought, smirking a little. My mother shot a strange glance at my dad, one that meant more than I could have known, then turned back to Kai. Who's your friend, Kai? He shrugged, eyes fixed on the toy blocks he was stacking on the carpet. I don't know. My parents whispered to one another for a while after this, deliberating, and seemed to ultimately decide that it was okay for a boy of 4 to have an imaginary friend. Fair enough, I supposed. And we carried on. A week passed, then 2, and still the dogs would not settle when it came to the house's creaking. They would growl and even bark far too often throughout the night. What really got to me was the time Miss Bear was sleeping at the foot of my bed and started growling. Seemingly at nothing. I couldn't hear any creaking. It wasn't a windy night. But she was growling at the wall of my room, the one shared with Kai. Enough, I hissed. Miss Bear looked at me for a moment, then back at the wall, and let out a sharp bark. I opened my mouth to protest, but abruptly she yelped, backing away, tail between her legs. Her sudden fear shot my own feeling of "you creepy" right up to "oh fuck, oh god, oh hell no." "What is it, girl?" I whispered. Miss Bear's hackles were raised, her tail still between her legs. She maintained a low growl. Then all at once she shot out of my room, veering toward Kai's door. I jumped out of bed and followed her into my brother's room. Kai was awake. He was sitting on his bed, facing our shared wall. "It's okay," he said to our dog. "It was just my friend." I looked from Kai to the dogs. Chiefy had come as well to see what the fuss was about, then threw my hands up and left. It was okay for a boy of 4 to have an imaginary friend, right? The next day, on a whim, I took a closer look at the wall my brother and I shared. I swung the curtains open to let in the daylight, then ran my hand over the wooden planks and the ivory paint that covered them. I couldn't sense anything off. There were a couple paintings hanging on the wall, a dresser pushed up against it, and an air intake vent at its base. Unsatisfied, I decided to lay my shoulder into the dresser and push it away from the wall. The cool draft from the air vent caused goosebumps to break out on my leg as I peered behind the dresser. It was subtle, but at the bottom of the wall, just above the baseboards, there was a stain. It was old and brown, but might have once been red. The stain ran down the wall in rivulets, as if a thick liquid had splattered there and dribbled down. Scrunching my nose in disgust, I took a quick sniff. The same sourness that the house was notorious for filled my nostrils, but nothing else. I'm not sure what I was expecting, really. Like I said, the stain was old. It was probably nothing. With an aggravated huff, I shoved the dresser back in place and got on with my day. Later that day, I was in the living room with Lena, who was unusually quiet. My mom was complaining to my dad that we were out of groceries again and that she was going to run to the store. She asked Lena if she wanted to join her, and to both me and my mom's surprise, Lena said no. Once my mom had gone, I asked my little sister what was up. "You always go with Mom? Is everything okay?" She shrugged, but didn't answer. "Hey, Lena," I pressed. "What's up? You can talk to me." She slowly looked at me and said, "This house is scary." Frowning, I asked her to elaborate. For a time, she considered how to explain. Finally, she said, "It feels like we aren't the only ones living here." I explained to her that this wasn't true and that we just weren't used to living in such a large and old home. She didn't seem all that convinced. And why should she have? The place was damned creepy. The incessant creaking and moaning, the stink, the dogs always growling, Kai's awful imaginary friend, strange stains on the walls. Hell, even the way the neighbors always stared at us was weird. That night I awoke to one of our dogs sniffing my feet. This obnoxious new habit woke me up as often as the growling. I assumed it was to do with the smell of the place. It probably clung to my feet as I walked around during the day. And dogs are infamous for sniffing, licking, and even eating anything that smells funky. I pushed the dog back with my heel and grumbled, "Stop. Go." The dog, which I assumed was Chiefy by the heavy footfalls, obeyed and left. I was halfway sunken back into sleep when Lena's shrill shriek sent my heart into my throat. I scrambled out of bed, terrified that my sister had badly hurt herself somehow. This wasn't a little scream. It was the type of scream that told you something was really wrong. I was the first to enter her room, though I could hear my parents bumping around down the hall. "Lena," I cried. "Are you okay?" She was sitting up on her bed, back against the wall, blankets scrunched up to her eyes. And how bright those wide, petrified eyes were, even in the dark. Lena whimpered something unintelligible. I stepped closer, noticing that she wasn't really looking at me. But beyond me, at the corner of her room, she whispered, "Someone. Behind you." I could hear my parents stumbling out from their room. They weren't here yet. I was petrified, nearly unable to move. Lena kept staring past me, her tears glistening in the gloom. Slowly, I turned around. In the darkness that dominated that corner of the room, I thought I saw the figure of... I'm not sure what. To this day, I'm not sure if I really saw anything or if I just imagined it. But I think it was a woman or a girl. Naked and bloodstained. Faceless, but for the shine of two piercing irises. I screamed. Lena joined me. My father snapped the light on as he stepped into Lena's room. The darkness was gone, and with it, the figure. "What the hell happened?" he bellowed. In tandem, Lena and I pointed at the corner. My sister mumbled, "There." There was someone in the corner. I finished for her, my arm trembling. As unsure as I am in hindsight of what I saw in that moment, I was not. I was mortified. As someone who had never believed in the supernatural, I found myself feeling differently all at once. My father frowned at the corner, which was unoccupied. It was entirely normal, except I noticed it then, old stains, similar to those behind my dresser, low on the wall. By then my mom had joined us, and the look she shared with my dad sent ice down my spine. Somehow the expression on her face scared me more than even the thing I had maybe seen in the shadows. "There's nothing," my dad announced after a moment. "Tyson, dear," my mom said. My dad held up a hand, as if to say, "Don't." He turned back to my sister and I. "Girls, it's normal to get spooked in a new house like this. Happens to your mother and me too. But don't let it get to you. You hear? It's just an old house. It'll take some getting used to." He gestured at the dogs, who had hurried in at some point amid the confusion. "Even these two get spooked here and there. It's normal." We spoke a little longer, until Lena and I had calmed down a little, then decided to go back to bed. Lena asked if she could sleep in my room. I said yes, more for myself than for her. She joined me on my bed and quickly drifted off, assured by her big sister's presence. I lay there for a while, wondering how it was that Kai hadn't woken from the earlier screaming. Then, just as I fell asleep, I thought I heard my brother in the other room, speaking to his imaginary friend. The next day we all carried on, as though nothing had happened the prior night, though there was a tension in the way we moved through the house and spoke to each other. Lena was the worst of us in this regard. She spoke very little, and, more concerningly, did not play or sing along to her K-pop soundtrack a single time. I was in the midst of mopping the floor. The dogs had gotten it dirt-stained again, when the false normalcy of the day broke. Kai approached my mother in the kitchen, as she was chopping vegetables. My dad had just returned from the store with 2 bags of groceries and was orbiting my mom as he unloaded them. Kai softly said, "Mom?" "Yes, hon? What is it?" "Can we go back to our old house?" My dad ceased his motion, facing away but listening keenly. I did the same, pausing, with the mop pushed halfway across the landing. Mom looked worriedly at Kai. "Why do you want to go back, sweetie?" "I don't want to talk to him anymore," whispered Kai. A horror passed over my mother's features. It was the same expression that had shaken me the night before. My father placed his hands on the countertop, bowing his head and letting out a long, grisly sigh. "Shit," he muttered. "Tyson," my mom murmured. "We ought to discuss this with Ari, at least. She's old enough. She ought to have a say." I dropped the mop with a clatter and rushed into the kitchen. "Have a say about what?" I demanded. "Damn it," my dad said. "Kai, buddy, go watch a show with Lena, will you?" "But," Kai started. "I'll answer your question soon, bud. I promise. For now, go join Lena." Somberly, my little brother obeyed. A moment later, the raucous sound of SpongeBob SquarePants carried down the hall. I looked at my parents and crossed my arms. "Ari, love," my dad started. "We weren't totally honest with you when we first moved in." I frowned, waiting. My mom said, "The smell isn't the only reason why we were able to afford this house." She spoke as if the words hurt to say. "What other reason?" I asked impatiently. Dad sighed again. "Something happened to the family who used to live here, something awful." That image of the blood-stained girl in the corner flashed through my mind. I hugged myself, feeling the sting of tears at the back of my eyes. "I'll be blunt," my father continued. because there's no better way of saying this. The family who last lived here, they died. They were killed right here in this house. I lifted a hand to my mouth. The tears were here now, their warmth running down my cheeks. Tyson, tell her the whole thing, Mom insisted. Damn it, fine. My dad looked me square in the eyes. The father of that family, he was the one who killed him, after which he killed himself. But I sank into one of the dining chairs, shaking. I thought of the brown stains on the walls, how they looked like they had once been crimson. And you bought this house anyway? I cried. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, dear, my mother said. Then she added, though perhaps it was a mistake. No, rebuked my father. There's nothing wrong with this house. It's a little creepy, a little creaky, but that's it. Living here's still a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
And that was the end of it, for the moment at least. My dad refused to entertain the notion that our wonderful new home was haunted. And honestly, I wasn't quite there yet myself. Again, I'd never believed in that sort of thing. And the girl I thought I saw, I could have imagined it. My sister had told me there was someone there. When you look into the dark, often you'll see just what you're expecting, or worse, what you're fearing. That doesn't make it real. So we carried on. Kai was told to ignore his imaginary friend. Lena needed a few days, but eventually she got back to her K-pop demon hunter's obsession. The dogs even settled down somewhat. Nothing else would happen for a while that suggested our house was haunted, and I tried my damnedest not to dwell on the fact that a family had been butchered within my home's walls. At least I finally understood why the neighbors gawked at us so much. What sort of family would want to live there, they were surely thinking. The peace we maintained for a while was broken by my brother's crying one day. Despite Kai's age, he was not one to cry easily. So when I heard him weeping, I set my textbook and notes aside and went to check on him. I knocked gently and opened his door. He was sitting on the floor in the middle of his room with his legs crossed, crying into his palms. Hey, Kai, I said, approaching him and kneeling. What's wrong? Did something happen? Kai's lower lip quivered as he spoke. He came back. My stomach sank. Who came back? My friend. He started, but hesitated. The scary man. I thought he was your friend, I asked, as confused as I was frightened. No, Kai whimpered. He's bad. I looked warily around the room. Swallowing, I asked my brother, where did you see this man? Hand shaking, Kai pointed at our shared wall. I shivered as I looked at it. It was much like my side. There was a small desk pushed up against a surface of wooden planks, painted ivory white. A couple paintings hung on it, and an air vent was built into its base. There was no brown staining that I could see here, though, mercifully. I sighed as I hugged my little brother. It'll be okay, I fumbled. Unsurprisingly, Kai did not seem assured. I tried again. Hey, do you want to sleep with me tonight? His eyes lit up. Really? Yes, really, I answered with a smile. I hadn't invited him into my room much in the past couple years. Seeing how much it meant to him warmed me and made me feel a little bad. That night he pranced into my room, pillow clutched in his arms. Close the door, I told him with a smirk, or Chiefy is going to be licking our feet tonight. We got cozy in bed and I read him a bit of a book he loved about a boy and a dragon. Once we were done with that, I asked him if he wanted to tell me anything about his former friend, the so-called scary man. He pouted and shook his head. Fair enough, I thought. Regretting that I'd even asked, I shifted the subject to one of his favorite shows, earning back his precious smile. We spoke for a while about similar things that brought him comfort, and eventually he dozed off. After tucking him in, I got back to studying for another hour, and then turned off the bedside lamp and went to sleep. It was a few hours into the night when one of the dogs started sniffing my foot. I was mildly aware of this in a state of half sleep and tried to ignore it. Then the hound started licking, making it impossible to shrug off. Stop, I moaned, nearly letting out an involuntary giggle at the tickle of the tongue on the sole of my foot. Cut it out, go. The dog listened, panting for a moment longer, then stepping away. I was starting to drift back asleep
When I remembered that I had asked Kai to close the door earlier, specifically so that the dogs wouldn't get in, abruptly I sat up. My heart quickened as I turned to look at the door. It was closed. I swung off the bed, taking care not to wake Kai, and whispered, "Chiefy? Miss Bear? Are you in here?" There was no response. There was no dog. I stood in the middle of my room, heart hammering, unsure what to do or think. I lifted my foot and felt it. It was damp. But then I was sweating. Surely that's all it was. A little sweat on my foot. The sniffing and licking was a weird dream, that's all. I'm too old to be getting spooked like this, I told myself, frustrated. I got back into bed with a huff and tried to get back to sleep. It took some time, and as I lay there, I thought I saw a figure standing in the shadows past the foot of my bed. A blood-stained girl, perhaps? I'm too old for this, I repeated, exhausted and frustrated. Stop imagining things, Ari. I turned away and closed my eyes.
The following days were normal, thankfully. Kai went back to sleeping in his room and didn't have any more visits from the scary man. I didn't have any more creepy foot dreams. And as for the apparitions I continued to see in the shadows of the house, well, once I smartened up and saw them for what they were, figments of my childish imagination, they bothered me less. Life carried on. A few normal days turned to weeks. In the surety of that routine, I couldn't have known that the worst of my family's ordeal was yet to come. I couldn't have fathomed just how dark this home's secrets truly were. The turning point arrived during one of my daily walks. Chiefy and Miss Bear were pulling on their leashes like usual, propelling me down the street when I caught one of the neighbors staring at me. He was out by his mailbox, closer than I'd ever caught any of them. They usually stared from their windows and porches. The calm weeks had made me confident in my family's choice to purchase the house, and so I let my anger get the better of me as I glared back at this man. "Excuse me, sir?" I called. He glanced at me the way a child would look at a ghost. "Yes? You and others in your home are always staring at us. It's rude and exhausting. What is your deal?" He fidgeted with the letters he'd drawn from the mailbox. Well, he mumbled. Then, after a moment, he looked up, seeming to gather his resolve. "Call it rude, but we can't help but wonder what sort of folks would want to buy a house like that." The dogs were restless. "Sit," I commanded. "Sit and stay." As I met the man's gaze again, I said, "What sort of folks, you ask? The sort who aren't taken by superstition." I smiled inwardly, pleased with my delivery. The man made a face halfway between a frown and a grimace. "Superstition?" he managed. "You do know what happened in that house, right?" I tilted my chin up and answered without hesitation. "The father killed his family and then himself. Horrible, no doubt about it. But not any reason to pass up on a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Unless you're superstitious, that is." "The father?" whispered the man. His eyes widened and he looked over my shoulder at the house. "What?" I demanded. "You don't know," he said under his breath, his worried gaze falling back onto me. "I don't know what." Chiefy pushed his head into my leg. Miss Bear whined a little. The man explained. "There was a lot of confusion when that horrible thing happened to the family who lived there. The official reports claimed the whole family had died because that was the convenient conclusion for the investigators. But that was only a rotten bit of negligence and cowardice." He swallowed. "The truth is that the wife and the 2 children were butchered, and the father was never found." Thoughts laced in fear raced through my mind. My dogs continued to whine. "Bastard got away," continued the man. "No one knows where he went. All of us around here upped our security after. You can bet on that. Reinforced windows and doors, alarm systems, cameras, the whole suite. And then comes along a seemingly nice little family eager to move into that godforsaken place. Imagine our shock." He shook his head. "Call it rude, miss, but you can't quite blame us for gawking, can you?" I licked my lips, which stung with dryness. Where did he go?" The man shrugged. "Like I said, no one knows." Then he looked around as though he were expecting an ambush. Leaning closer, he whispered, "Sometimes, though, our cameras catch footage of what looks like a ragged man ambling around the shrouded dark of the neighborhood." "You've shown this to the police?"
I asked. Of course. We've done all we can to get that investigation reopened. It was a terrible thing those investigators did, but all our efforts fell on deaf ears. I glanced over my shoulder at the house. My parents had gone out for groceries again. Kai and Lena were home alone. I have to go, I cried, and started running back home. Was the man lying? Were my parents the ones lying? I tried to make sense of it as I ran back, and slowly, in the depths of my intuition, a suspicion began to form. I burst through the front door, calling out for my siblings. They appeared a moment later, confused and a little scared. Stay with me, I told them. Stay close. I led them up to Kai's room and asked him to show me where the scary man had been. As he lifted his arm to point, nausea swept over me. He wasn't pointing at the wall. He was pointing at the vent. I should have called the police right then and taken my siblings over to the neighbor's place. But a delirious need to know took hold of me without me having much say in it. I lurched toward the vent and grabbed it by the sides. I pushed and pulled. It didn't budge. I pushed harder. Suddenly, a groan passed through the wall and the vent gave way. No, not only the vent. A square section of the wall went inward, about 3 feet wide and tall, with the vent at its base. Cobwebs and dust puffed out. What I'd thought was a solid wall separating my room and my brother's turned out to be a gap wide enough for someone to squeeze through. A sour reek wafted from the place. Stay here, I told my siblings, and in my delirium I crawled through the opening. Lena and Kai protested, but I waved them off. I shimmied along the space until I was behind the vent leading into my own room. I pushed hard, and, as I expected, the wall gave way. Another crudely cut square opened to my room. Peering out from there, the first thing I saw was the foot of my bed, and I imagined my feet poking out from the edge as I slept. A sighing sound carried from the far end of the crawl space. I froze in place, listening. The sighing was mixed with a sort of humming. It went. It grew louder. A slow, rolling noise. Feeling as though my heart would burst from my chest, I slowly twisted my head. It was awfully dark at the far end of the gap. I squinted into the shadows until I could make out a solid vertical line in the dark. The end of the wall, a corner where the crawl space turned and continued out of view. The sound became more excited. Oh! I leaned forward just a bit, narrowing my eyes, trying to make sense of what I saw. Half a face, peeking out from the corner, one bloodshot eye, pallid, withered skin, a twisting, unnatural grin of rotten teeth, a scraggly, bony hand clutching the wall. The creature that might have been a man started to laugh again. Hoo 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 hoo, I screeched as I threw myself back into Kai's room. It was such a scream that my throat would hurt for days to come. I grabbed my siblings' hands and ran downstairs, the ugly walls and furnishings of the house passing by me in a blur. That horrible laughing chased us all the way, and I swear I heard scurrying footsteps in our wake. We burst outside and ran straight to the neighbors. No creature followed us there that I could see. With the neighbor's phone, I called the police and then my parents. Within 20 minutes, our lane was crammed with emergency vehicles. Dozens of lights flashing in the late afternoon dim. We didn't know, Ari, I swear, insisted my father. The realtor told us they all died. My family and I were standing huddled by our car, waiting anxiously as the authorities searched our house. Well, they didn't, I snapped back. I saw him. My mother covered her face with her hands. My father shook his head, cursing to himself. Sometime later, one of the policemen approached us wearing a grim expression. Whoever your daughter saw, he said to my parents, is gone. The house is empty. That said, your daughter definitely did see someone. My mom wailed. My dad just stared. Follow me, the policeman said. You'll want to see this. Mom stayed with the kids while my dad and I went back into the house. The cop led us into an opening on the main floor, much like the ones I'd discovered upstairs. The passages on the ground floor were wider, danker, moist dirt, at least I hope it was dirt, squelched underfoot, and I finally understood why our floors were always so muddy. The spaces between the walls eventually led to a cave of sorts, dug out of the earth below the house. There were used up cans of soup, beans, and soda, and rotting bits of meat and fruit laying all about the place. With that, I finally understood why our groceries were so quick to run out. And the sour reek, it reached its pinnacle here in this atrocity of a den hidden beneath my house. The father who had slain his family had not died. He had lived on here in this cave, leeching off of and tormenting my family. I thought about everything my family and I had experienced leading up to that moment and shuddered, nearly vomiting right there. We moved out immediately, not only to a new house, but to a new city. We have reinforced windows and doors in our new place, and we watch any who pass by our house the same way our former neighbors used to look at us. But it's not enough, because the man who had haunted us was never found. He is still on the loose today. The 5 of us live as though we're waiting for that thing to reappear. We try to lead a normal life, but Kai continues to imagine the return of his imaginary friend. My mother checks our pantry and fridge daily, often freaking out, thinking we're running out of food faster than we should. My dad loses it anytime he spots even a bit of dirt on the floor, and I wake up in the middle of the night at least 3 times a week with the awful sense that something has been licking my feet.